My God, I hate trucks.
National government debt rose to a new record high in 2018. According to the Treasury Bureau, the government's outstanding debt hit 7.3 trillion pesos last year. That's 9.6% higher compared to that incurred in 2017. It explains that weaker peso partly contributed to the higher borrowings. Despite the higher debt, the country's debt to GDP ratio fell slightly from 42.1% in 2017 to 41.9% in 2018. The lower ratio means the country has the ability to pay its debts. Treasury Bureau attributes the slight drop to the government's good financial management and sustained economic growth. The economy grew by 6.2% in 2018. The government's biggest revenue-generating agency fails to reach its collection target for 2018, despite higher taxes in light of the tax reform law. In a report to the House Ways and Means Committee, the Bureau of Internal Revenue says it collected 1.9 trillion pesos in 2018. That is 4% short of its over 2 trillion peso goal. The agency attributes the shortfall to lower than expected income, value-added and excise tax collections. It adds appeals for tax exemptions and suspensions of operations of some mining companies also contributed to the failure to meet the target. Senators are urging the Transportation Department to regulate operations of motorcycle taxis. The Senate Committee on Public Services asserts non-regulation of motorcycles for hire under ride-hailing apps such as Angkas could endanger the safety of passengers. Last December, the Supreme Court issued a temporary restraining order stopping anew operations of Angkas for violating the Land Transportation and Traffic Code.
Which is unregulated, is even definitely unsafe. So the challenge is to regulate them properly. It's common sense. They did the same for Uber and Grab,
right,
as far as passenger private automobiles are concerned. Why not do the same for the motorcycles on the legal issue?
The Transportation Department says a technical working group is looking into the case of Angkas, but it adds a department order is not enough to legalize Angkas's operations because there should be an amendment to the law. Administration is asking the Commission on Elections to exempt major infrastructure projects in its election ban on public works projects. Budget Secretary Ben Diokno says economic managers will recommend to President Duterte next week the exemption of at least 75 big-ticket projects from the election ban. The President is then expected to make the official request to the COMELEC. Diokno explains this will make sure the Build, Build, Build program will not be hampered.
Our budget for next year for infra is close to 1 trillion pesos, okay, 1 trillion. And it's very important that we have it started during the dry months, okay? So you can say that maybe at least half of that 2 trillion pesos, okay, will get started this first quarter.
Earlier, Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Ernesto Pernia said the exemption will help the government meet its growth and spending targets this year.
The Provincial Police Director, Senior Superintendent Pablo Labra II, now clarifying person 1 who was initially tagged as certain Kama appears to be a mistake. Kama was being identified as belonging to a so-called Ajang group, which may be behind the January 27 Jolo Cathedral bombing that killed 21 people and wounded scores of others. Now, Labra says the 2 individuals virtually now cleared of any offense, but both have expressed willingness to cooperate if summoned again by investigators. Now, we ask Labra if the PNP will have to apologize or whether the national government will have to do that for this seeming blunder of prematurely identifying and releasing to the public the images of these 2 individuals as possibly having links to the bombing. Here's what he has to say.
Kung if it was wrong to suspect them to have done wrong, to have committed something bad, but we are investigating, sir. There is an incident we have to solve. We need to do anything that we should do to solve this.
Meanwhile, 2 more people, or rather persons of interest seen in the CCTV footage have also voluntarily come forward this afternoon also to clear their names and deny any role in the bombing. There is no word yet on how their questioning turned out. Pia.
David Santos there reporting live from Jolo. Defense and military officials now say it's possible that at least one of the twin explosions in Jolo, Sulu was a suicide bombing. That after President Duterte said the deadly blasts were the work of suicide bombers. Our Rex Remigio has more.
After President Duterte said the blast in Jolo, Sulu could be the handiwork of suicide bombers, defense and military officials are now saying the president could be correct. After they initially ruled out the possibility of suicide bombing hours after the blast. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana says the first blast might not be a case of suicide bombing after an unidentified woman left a bag in front of the church. Officials, however, say the second blast could be suicide bombing done by a Yemeni based on intelligence reports.
I was also convinced immediately na baka suicide bombing yun, ano? But pagka kasi suicide bombing na yan, somebody will immediately claim na itong taong ito naging martir. Wala pa naman tayo nakikitang ganun eh.
DNA tests are being conducted on the remains of victims to determine their nationalities. Lorenzana also says the bombing in Lamitan, Basilan in July 31 last year was also a case of suicide bombing done by a Moroccan national. Lorenzana says around 40 foreign fighters are roaming in Mindanao based on their intelligence reports.
There may be some efforts to educate these people to suicide bombing, but I don't think they are succeeding. Kasi hindi pa naman ganun kaano yung mga Pilipino na mag-suicide bomb.
Officials, however, say the public should not be alarmed by the possible presence of suicide bombers. They say they are intensifying their operations against the Abu Sayyaf in Sulu. Armed Forces Chief General Benjamin Madrigal meanwhile says they're still looking into the possible link between the blast in Jolo and the grenade attack in Zamboanga City Tuesday night.
Yung mga peace spoilers are trying to put religious undertone dito sa pangyayari. Kaya nga hinihingi natin na tingnan muna natin na magiging resulta ng investigation, no? At hindi ka agad tayo makapagbigay ng conclusive statement tungkol dyan.
Senator Panfilo Lacson believes the blasts indicate a shortcoming on the part of defense and military officials. He says officials should improve intelligence gathering even as they have been aware of the plan to bomb Jolo as early as August 2018.
Anong ginawang action noong dapat mag-implement noong yung product na intelligence?
Authorities are calling on the public to stay calm and remain vigilant against suspicious persons and activities. Rex Remigio, CNN, Philippines.
The military says 2 people were killed, at least 4 others injured in an explosion at a mosque in Zamboanga City early this morning. This comes just days after the attack on a cathedral in Jolo. We go above and beyond the headlines. Let's speak with Zamboanga City Mayor Ben Climaco. Ma'am, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Pia, and all our televiewers.
Well, ma'am, what can you tell us about the casualties? How many so far?
Well, so far there have been 2 victims that were casualties, and they were already brought to Isabela. This is a tablik that goes from different communities. They come from Dipolog to have a religious mission in the city of Zamboanga. Unfortunately, somebody hurled a grenade last night in the mosque. And immediately the city government responded together with the police. And just a while ago, we had a gathering of the Ulama Council together with the different religious organizations. And we have worked together to call for people's vigilance, sobriety, and unity for Zamboanga City. And we appeal that we be spared from further violence because we are just starting to rehabilitate ourselves. Nonetheless, with all the security forces in place, the biggest ingredient for any community to be safe is the support of our Muslim Christian constituencies. And I have always maintained that places of worship should always also be guarded, particularly after what happened in last night's incident, as well as what happened in Jolo.
So you're saying places of worship like the mosque, as we see now in the footage we're showing, and the cathedral in Jolo, and many others should be zones of peace.
Yes, definitely, but there are also zones of the need for us to also protect them because of the presence of worshippers, and even the Ulama Council issued a statement also earlier calling for sobriety and unity. And again, we would want to see out of all of these tragedies is that worshippers, with whatever faith they belong to, have been victims of these atrocious incidents, and thus we would want that an end to this incidents be realized, and we are calling for the police, the military. But again, the important aspect really is the cooperation of the community to be force multipliers in ensuring our community be protected. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. This is happening at a very disturbing time. Just 48 hours since the bombing in Jolo, in the cathedral in Jolo in Sulu, and then you have this and. This, of course, coming in the heels of a plebiscite for the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Do you and other officials there in Mindanao see this as an attempt to, perhaps an effort to divide Mindanao along religious lines? What is happening right now?
We're very, very sensitive towards matters of divisiveness. That's why we cannot make any conclusions without the thorough investigation of the police. Given that the city government of Zamboanga, in line with the directive of the DILG, will also call for a widened, expanded City Peace and Order Council meeting tomorrow so that we will be able to review our security plans to include the religious sector, the barangays, as well as the sector of education. And we are calling for a similar Peace and Order Council for the entire region of the peninsula, being the Regional Peace and Order Council chair. We would want to set aside any conclusions that would lead to divisiveness at this very moment, because it's a very sensitive issue, and anything that can be said might fuel further emotional responses from the people that will further lead to and violate and also further escalate the problem. Thus, we're very particular about this, but we need, as local chief executive, to be on the ground and work with the people to ensure that everyone will be experiencing the opportunity towards stabilization.
Ma'am, are there already suspects, and is there a motive already?
Well, we have tried to establish the motive. Two of the victims have already been sent back to Isabela, and the police has created its own special investigating unit together with the task force, and we're remediating the matter at this moment.
All right. Mayor Beng Climaco of the City of Zamboanga, thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us this evening. We appreciate all your online comments on our top stories tonight. Keep them coming to our pages at CNN Philippines. We're also live right now on Facebook. The global headlines first. The ball now in the European Union's court after British lawmakers agreed on a deal regarding the United Kingdom's withdrawal from the European Union, more commonly known as Brexit. Parliament wants Prime Minister Theresa May to go back to Brussels in Belgium and renegotiate. Specifically, they want concessions on the so-called Irish backstop. This would prevent a hard border between Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, and the Republic of Ireland, which is part of the EU. This task, however, is easier said than done. The EU has been consistent in saying that the withdrawal agreement is done and no longer up for renegotiation. But especially dangerous, life-threatening temperatures in the U.S. Midwest. Chicago City in the state of Illinois could reach a new record low temperature of negative 32 degrees this week. That's even colder than some parts of Antarctica. Senators wanting to make sure the country's third telecommunications player will pass legal scrutiny. Under question now whether or not the Mindanao Islamic Telephone Company, or Mislatel, has a valid franchise. Joyce Ilas reports.
Regulators have named the country's third telecommunications company. But senators reviewing the deal want to make sure the winning consortium has a valid franchise to operate. At stake is the franchise of Mindanao Islamic Telephone Company, or Mislatel. Mislatel is part of the consortium. It obtained a congressional franchise in 1998, but the company never operated. The consortium is required to have a valid franchise to qualify as third telco. But Senate Minority Leader Franklin Drilon has repeatedly pointed out Mislatel's franchise is deemed revoked since the company violated its terms. First, Mislatel failed to operate within a year after getting its franchise in 1998. And second, it did not get congressional approval when its owner transferred the franchise to the consortium. Drilon says Ms. Latel's franchise should be able to withstand legal challenge.
We are raising these issues because we are concerned that, a competitor of Ms. Litel will certainly raise these issues in court, and we do not want that to happen.
Ms. Litel has always said it has a valid franchise, and that franchise can only be revoked through a court petition questioning its authority to operate, or if Congress revokes the franchise. Both did not happen. The Office of the Solicitor General shares the position.
The proper remedy, Your Honor, would be through a quo warranto proceedings. We believe is the appropriate remedy, considering that there are actually factual issues that ought to be threshed out.
For Senator Mig Zubiri, the Senate should be able to find ways to improve communication and internet problems facing consumers.
We could correct these deficiencies by allowing the Senate to grant them the ownership transfer, and then they can move on and do their work and give the people the internet service and the cell phone service that we truly need.
We want to help, but certainly these legal issues must be resolved to provide stability. If we do not examine all of this and provide a solution, masasabit ito pagdating ng panahon, and we're back to square one.
To clear the air, Senate Public Services Committee Chairperson Grace Poe says she is looking into the possibility of the Senate curing the defects of and questions on the legality of Ms. Latel's franchise.
Pinipresenta ko, kung ito papayagan ng Senado dahil sa tingin natin emergency na kailangan natin ng serbisyong ganyan, bigay natin. Makaka-operate sila, pero pag kwenisyon ng korte, biglang matitigil sila.
Poe reminds the consortium of the big risk. If the court nullifies the franchise, Ms. Litel will no longer recover the more than 25 billion peso performance bond it paid the government. The Senate panel will also decide on the resolution, allowing the transfer of Ms. Litel's ownership and franchise to the consortium led by Davao City-based businessman Dennis Uy. Joyce Ila, CNN Philippines.